At the end of the day, like you can come up with the most brilliant ad, but seeing the human emotion is really what we need to be doing. And that's where creators were like a really, really strong part of our overall framework and the way that we thought about like pushing that message. Because for us, when you see that raw emotion, that's better than anything else we could do.
Explore the minds and marketing strategies behind today's winning brands and businesses. Tap into the power of the creator economy with Earned by CreatorIQ.
Welcome back to Earn. Thank you so much. I am excited to have Raashi Rosenberger. Raashi, thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So, spoiler alert, we are friends. We've known each other now for what, I guess, almost just 6 years.
So many years,
Yeah,
Brit.
so
many
many
years.
In dog years, right?
Yeah, right.
I'm really excited to have you here today. You're the head of marketing at Meta Wearables, but you have an extensive background. I love the most I think about you. You can go deep on pretty much any conversation, philosophical and otherwise, but also you are a person who is intimately interested in people and the future and really the way those connections get made. And that's kind of what we're all about. So that's what I want to talk about today.
I love that. Yeah. People is like what motivates me. It's the reason I exist, but I love thinking about the future.
Yeah.
Like I love when we talk about how innovation influences human behavior. So excited for it.
Okay. I actually want to start there. So Meta Wearables, I think for those of us who are either less familiar or maybe even a little skeptical, I want to start in the future, like 2-5 years from now. I wake up in the morning, I reach over to my bedside table, I put on my glasses. What does my day look like? How has it changed?
Yeah, I love that. So here's one of the things that we spend a lot of time talking about and thinking about when we're understanding like future behavior for Meta Wearables. So the first thing is we really want to make sure that our technology is not replacing reality. Like at the end of the day, we operate under this mission that technology can make your day-to-day lives feel more natural. And actually the technology that we have right now is taking us out of this more human, more natural type of connection and
Technology
interaction.
being your phone, like reaching your pocket, looking down at a
Exactly.
screen.
Screens that take you out of your like in the moment experience. So 5-10 years into the future, we actually don't think that wearable devices are going to completely replace existing technology. But what we do think is they're going to be different interfaces. And so when we think about what that actually looks like, it can be that you spend more time in your glasses. So for those of you that have Ray-Ban Metas, what you can do is you can actually take a photo simply by clicking your glasses, and you don't have to like pull out your phone and then kind of be disengaged. We've actually seen research of parents who are taking pictures of their children, and they actually feel less oxytocin spikes when they have to pull out their phone. It's like you don't get to experience that moment as much. And so for us, this idea is like just keeping your phone in the pocket in the same way, like the paradigm shift is actually really similar to when the phone came out. You used to spend all of your time on your laptop. Now you're spending less time on your laptop, more time on your phone. For those of you who know, like I would never book an airplane travel on my phone. Now I exclusively book airplane travel on my phone, right? So it's like you'll just start to come up with these different types of tasks where you're engaging more frequently with your glasses. And the real like mission and objective of that is essentially for you to just spend more time looking up, right? More time engaging and more time experiencing the world around you and then connecting with those people that you've already formed like such wonderful relationships with.
So is it really about learning? Is it about safety? Is it about, you talked a lot about like connection, engagement in the world. How does the technology facilitate that? What are you doing, seeing? You mentioned taking pictures with your glasses.
Yep.
What else is it facilitating?
Yeah. Well, it's actually really interesting in terms of the very specific use cases that we're seeing. So for the Ray-Ban Metas right now, primarily we see people are capturing content, taking pictures, taking videos. Like, yes, that's a very clear and really easy use case. But we actually see that Meta AI is one of the growing use cases. And I think it's been so fascinating to see over the past like 3 years how people have moved and what the different trends are for how they're using AI in general. So an HBR report came out a couple of months ago, and what we found is that like maybe 2 years ago, they were primarily using AI for brainstorming, coming up with new ideas. And what we're seeing is there's incredible shift. Number one, they're still spending it brainstorming, but that's actually gone down a little bit. They're actually spending a lot more time with asking their AI more questions about how to engage with other people around them. So it's more personal type questions. That's the first thing. And then number two, the other biggest use case that kind of increased was that they're spending more time actually learning and discovering new things. And so this idea to get like deeper into the individual moment that you are and better understand the context, better understand the history, it's something that is a really unexpected way that people are using it. But those use cases, it essentially allows you to get more information in bite-sized ways.
Yeah. I actually love that as somebody who is a total nerd about places, people, history. Like I would walk around with an audio tour everywhere if I could. So I love the idea of being able to get the context of the place, the people, the situation that you're in. Okay, talk to me a little bit about the helping to drive interpersonal connection and using AI to navigate conversations, communication, interpersonal relationships. That was surprising to me when you said that.
Yeah, definitely. So this is actually something that we're starting to see that's like brought on a little bit more by the younger generations. I'll just give you like a very quick anecdote that I think is illustrative. So we're talking to Gen Zer, and she said that what she does in terms of like actually using AI is she actually screen grabs her text messages with her boyfriend. And she's like, how can I respond to this in a way that feels level-headed, but warm, but also supports the point that I'm trying to make?
Wow.
And so using this as an assist is like something that's really interesting, less related to wearables per se, but actually just interesting in terms of how people are thinking about connecting and using technology. Like technology is scary, right? Like at the end of the day, I'm very, very aware of how the idea of using technology can be something that doesn't feel natural and intuitive. But what I love about this example is it's actually just a helper, right? It's just another tool to get you to make a more meaningful connection in your day-to-day life.
I really like that. We talk a lot about that in our approach to AI and really grounding our approach, our philosophy in a human first principle. And so AI as an accelerant of human connection, human creativity. And with creators, that's incredibly important, right? Like we think creators are powerful because they're people, right? This is a people-powered business, and creating those connections is what they do best. And so AI can really work to accelerate those. I love that example of, how can I coach myself? How can I learn how to be a better communicator, a better connector? I hadn't actually put that back into like our process, but even again, as we think about how brands work with creators, how creators connect with their consumers, their audiences, how they can work together, right? And collaborate together to create new and more powerful, more engaging content. I think that's really fascinating.
I think that's exactly right. And that's one of the things that is like the magical interplay between brands and creators, because at the end of the day, as a brand, I can come up like from a philosophical perspective and what I understand of user behavior, I can come up with like 5 or 10 different use cases. And those might be really interesting use cases. But when I hand those over to a creator, they'll actually take those 5 to 10 kind of seed ideas, and then they'll exponentially amplify it, but they'll make it their own. They'll make it more kind of like authentic based off of their day-to-day world. And that's actually why we love working with creators, is because it brings like, I would say when we think about it, it's far less about the aesthetic and it's significantly more about like that authentic story and that connection to the technology. And that's why our consumers can relate to it, is like they essentially create that lens that makes it feel super relatable.
No pun intended.
Exactly.
No, it is. It's like, it's the translation layer, right? It's how do I adapt this story or version this story in a way that's going to be relevant to very diverse communities, because everyone has a different connection point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has a different interaction experience. They're coming at things from a different place. And I think having that translation layer, having those stories told in ways that make sense to, again, really distinct communities of people is kind of essential today. Yep. How are you working with creators specifically for wearables?
Yeah, definitely. So when we think about like the technology space, so my background is like I've spent a lot of time with big tech companies. So I'm at Meta now, but I was at Google and I was at Pinterest before then. And one of the things I've become really familiar with is like tech influencers and how do we think about tech influencers and tech creators. And one of the things that I have spent a lot of time working with our teams on is we can't only think about tech influencers. We actually have to bring the technology down to a different class of creators and a different style of creators. And that's been, I think, like a real driving force. And part of why the Ray-Ban Meta glasses have been so successful is because we don't only target those like tech creators and tech influencers, but we actually start to target the creative class, how they're actually using the glasses. And then even beyond that, one of the things that I really believe in is because technology can be really scary, we really want to be thinking about how can technology be included in your day-to-day. And so how are we creating like rituals in specific moments where creators are using the product in a way that feels super, super natural? So that's been the biggest thing. We talk a lot about like who are the people that are going to help reinforce different rituals, who are going to be the people who start to create and develop new use cases for us, and then who are going to be the people who create stories and put our product within the context of the changing scope of technology. And so we kind of like really think about that as an overall ecosystem.
Right, because you are still trying to get people more comfortable with the idea of technology, even the way I started this conversation, right? I'm one of them. Like, I need to increase my comfortability. But you related it back to everyone has a phone. Most of us, present company included, wear glasses. And so this really is like kind of an everyone thing, right? And so if you think about the way the technology evolves over time, if it really is facilitating day-to-day life, that's really a bridge you have to build today and start to connect it to those real life moments.
Is that, I'm curious, is that how you work with a lot of brands? Like, does it feel similar, or are there different approaches in terms of how other brands are building out creators?
I mean, completely different approaches. I think like universal, it is so important to tap into your organic community. Who's interested in what you do? Who's interested in the technology, the advancement of technology? Who's interested in, Ray-Ban Metas? Who's interested in some of your competitors and partnerships, which we can talk about in a little bit. I think understanding what the conversation is, what people are talking about naturally without your participation is a really great place to start, right? What conversations spark without your intervention or involvement? And then how can you build into those? How can you understand what the most valuable conversations are, who the most interesting, valuable creators are? You talked earlier about leaning into creators who are helping you develop new use cases, right? That's incredibly sophisticated, right? They're using your product in new ways, different ways than maybe you would think of yourself. And that's real life. That's what people do with products when they're in the wild. So I think that's as kind of baseline, like universal, everyone should be doing that. I think the other way is absolutely what you're saying. It's like, it is so important for creators to be a part of the kind of educational flow of, especially with more technical products, right? But even when you think of like med skincare, right? It's really important to be able to explain, to be able to prove efficacy, to be able to explain the way things work, why they work. That's important, but that's not all creators. And so again, identifying the creators that tell the stories you want to tell to the communities you want to reach. That's really their role, is like as that bridge.
I love that. This idea of like inspiration, aspiration, and then how that just has a very different role than education, to me is the thing that we debate constantly in terms of how we execute, how we bring different stories to market. It just feels like really, really important to land that and be very specific about what the job is for each of those layers of the campaign and of the approach.
Okay, so you talked about your experience at other big tech companies, Google, Pinterest. I want to go actually back a little bit further. We mentioned your passion for people, like your drive to understand them. You've already mentioned several studies. You used the word oxytocin earlier. You started your kind of studies and career in neuroscience research. How does that influence the work you do today?
It really is the foundation of how I think. So I got my undergraduate degree in neuroscience. I actually spent so many years down in a dark basement in a beautiful facility at Bowdoin College.
That you never got to see.
But it was very, very dark, and it was in Maine, so it was very cold. But I did a lot of work really studying goldfish, and essentially my research was about social behavior, and it was about all of the underlying mechanisms. So you may not know this, but goldfish are actually the earliest descendants of dolphins. And what you can see is they have the simplest systems, but are actually incredibly social creatures. So if you buy a goldfish for a friend, a loved one, a child of yours, please buy 2. They love being around other goldfish. I still have dreams about this. But so because goldfish are that simplest form of social behavior, what we were able to do is we were able to kind of get a better understanding of why do people make social decisions? What are the reasons that people decide to shy away from different crowds? And for me, as I was doing this research and I was getting a better understanding, I was really excited, not just about what I was studying was the exact system, but I was really interested in how that happens and what the actual impact is. So for me, I just realized that doing the research was so fascinating, but I wanted to put a lot of the principles into practice. That being said, neuroscience was such a cool experience. It was such a nice background. And what we've actually started to see, I mean, this happened a little bit more in like the early 2000s, but continues to exist within marketing, is these two systems of psychology, neuroscience, human behavior, and marketing are coming more and more closely together. And to me, that just helps us better understand how marketing not only shapes culture, but also shapes human behavior and like shapes the decisions they make.
Okay, so then you moved to Pinterest early in your
I
career,
did.
but also early in the company's life.
Yeah.
What did you learn? I feel like you were thrust into, again, content, creator-led, Pinterest really being kind of one of, I think, the first evolutions of how we think about social media and kind of curation on social media. So talk to me a little bit about that, about your experience there. Place us too. Like, when were you there? How big was the company?
Yeah. So I joined Pinterest at the end of 2014, beginning of 2015. It was actually right when they started to monetize. And I was on the agency side at that point. I was teaching my client at the time how to use Pinterest. We had just launched their first ever Instagram account. And we essentially were trying to figure out, like, how do we describe this to our client? Like, it's really this combination of mood boards, but then also a little bit of social media, and it has like a little bit of Google search into it. And so we were coming up with all these different ways to do it. And I was actually with our Pinterest team at that time. And they were like, they called me that night and they were like, hey, can you go and teach all of our brands how to use Pinterest? Because it's such this interesting Venn diagram of like social plus search plus content curation all at the same time. So I hopped on. It was very early days. They were just starting to do monetization. But what we started to do was we started to build all of our content strategy. And at that point, it's actually really interesting talking about creators. Pinterest had sort of been known as this Midwestern mom sort of platform at that time. And there's a reason for that. So what we actually found is like OG Pinterest, it was a lot of mommy bloggers, if you will, which feels like a very dated term now, but that was sort of how we thought about them. And it's actually the way that Ben had actually started, the founder of Pinterest, he went to a few different conferences and blogger conferences. And what we found is like, there's actually this tremendous space of women bloggers, primarily from the Mormon community, because journaling is part of the Mormon faith. And so that was a really big part of it. So I would consider this community like the OG of bloggers. And
I did not know that.
That was like kind of how Pinterest came to be. It like really helped a lot of these people who are trying to tell their own stories. It just helped them gain traction and help them build out their content ecosystem, if you will. So
I do think, I mean, I agree, like the mommy blogger term does feel a little dated now, but I think I give that community huge credit for driving some of the fundamentals that make the space work today, which is like connection, community, word of mouth, right? Lived experience, really sharing information across a network that extends beyond your like physical network, but into people who are like sharing very similar life stage questions, challenges, successes.
Yeah.
And I think that's fascinating, right? It's like, especially as a mom now,
Totally.
like I need that. I look to the interwebs
Exactly.
and other women on the internet to really boost my, you know, community of women that I know in real life.
Absolutely. It was like the original kind of like niche marketing approach, but the way that it was done felt so open and also very vulnerable, which I think is like also very foundational to like how we think about creators, is like they're putting themselves out there. Like what bravery it takes to like actually do that and tell your own personal stories. And to me, Pinterest felt like a really safe and warm space. And it was kind of accelerating right in this time where social media was starting to raise up. And there were a lot of conversations about like, Pinterest is this ultimate happy place. And that was something that was really, really interesting because for brands who are interested in starting to build out the space, they were starting to see like, wow, this is a really interesting place where number one, it feels like a community that is both very engaged, super authentic, but also it feels like a really nice place to start to put your brand messaging into the world. So for me, working with creators at Pinterest, that was like the ultimate schooling in understanding creator marketing and understanding how powerful creators can be as a tool to help really drive and lift your brand.
Yep, I love that. I think I'm going to not skip over Google because obviously we could talk about Google for a really long time, but I actually really want to connect this, you know, what brought you over to Pinterest. I think the connection that you were trying to make is to really teach people what Pinterest is, what it does, what it can be.
Yeah.
Moving into something like Meta Quest, which you ran global brand for, same. It's like you're in these spaces where education, where making something that is new, maybe scary, definitely less understood, and creating connections that feel like familiar, happy, to use your term from Pinterest. How do you do that? How do you kind of work out those equations that help people understand why something exists and how they can really get value from it?
Well, I think for Meta Quest, when I was working on that business, the foundation, like I often talk about how a brand is not just what it says, but it's how it acts, like the decisions that it makes, right? And so to me, like one of the biggest like principles for MetaQuest was like, we can't just tell people how they should be using this device. We need to show how delightful it is. Because when people put on a headset, first of all, it's something that feels like not super natural. It actually tends to be kind of a home device because people feel like it looks funny when you're outside, and we totally understand that. But it's like when you put the device on, you are transported to a different world. And the joy and the magic that you feel, like just having that type of experience, it like kind of transcends. And so what our biggest push is like, it's really hard to talk about that in marketing, right? What's easier is for us to give scenario situations and creators, to be totally honest, opportunities to put the headset on and show the reactions. So show rather than tell is like the foundational principle.
Experience.
It has to be about the experience, because at the end of the day, like you can come up with the most brilliant ad, but seeing the human emotion is really what we need to be doing. And that's where creators were like a really, really strong part of our overall framework and the way that we thought about like pushing that message. Because for us, when you see that raw emotion, that's better than anything else we could do.
Yeah. You just had a good in-person, in real life experience. Talk to me about the restaurant you went to.
Oh, yes. So I went to like an incredible Michelin-starred restaurant in New York in Union Square. And so they actually did a Japanese tasting menu. It was a 12-course menu, and they created a accompanying custom VR experience. So you essentially had your headset on, and then every time you took a bite, they created this world, like this beautiful immersive world custom to that single bite that you had. So I had the experience with a few friends of mine, and what was really incredible about that experience is you could see how your senses are all connected. I mean, this is where I'll nerd out on like that neuroscience bit of it. It's like, this is so cool because every experience, every sense is elevated. It was like the opposite. Have you ever done like one of those tastings in the dark?
No, I have not.
Okay. So that feels like your single sense of taste is incredibly elevated. In this experience, it was almost like every single sense was activated, from visual to sound, but then also to taste and to flavor. And so that experience, it just felt like it's an incredibly 360-degree view, immersive experience that to me was actually just a really cool way to experience something slightly unexpected.
Yeah. It's very unexpected. I love everyone's in a headset, just like in your previous example, everyone is in the dark.
Yeah.
So it's probably a very awkward social experience. But again, then you take that headset off and you talk about the experience that you just had, which is fairly singular.
Yeah.
And then you create that connection, that conversation starter, that it's what you're talking about that works with creators and in your marketing, but in real life. Give people the experience, give them the opportunity to talk about it, to talk about how different it was, what it brought to the table, literally.
Yes, that's exactly right. It's like it feels so inherently social just by doing it, and what a cool experience to connect with other people about.
So do the worlds of wearables and say, like headset, AR, VR, they merge at some point?
Yeah, it's time will tell. This world is definitely crazy. We are seeing immersive technology get more slim, get more wearable, if you will. We are seeing wearable technology become more immersive. So I think that there's like a lot of really exciting innovation that we still have yet to see.
Okay, what is one thing that you are most excited about in the future? It can be based on the work that you do or just based on kind of technology in general. What are you excited about, those unlocks?
Mm-hmm.
And then what do you think we should watch out for and just be aware of?
I tend to be a tech optimist, as you can tell from my excitement.
An optimist in all ways, actually.
But for me, I think like what I'm most excited about is, first of all, like full confession, I'm totally addicted to my phone. But what I'm most excited about is to be able to more clearly interact with the world around me, still have access to the information. Like me and you both, we're working moms. We have a lot going on, but essentially creating a way for us to get more from that individual moment and also stay connected. So for me, I'm just really excited for what that looks like. I actually don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but I'm excited for that moment where it almost feels like you're just able to have that more natural dip from technology to out of technology. And then the thing that I think is just a good watch out is I believe in the power of technology, but I also believe that it's not going to save us. At the end of the day, we are all still humans, and like prioritizing human connection feels so critical. And there's no level of technology that's going to actually create those connections for us. So investing in the other people, we talked about this as kind of like the baseline, vulnerability, telling your own stories, connecting with other people. Like that doesn't happen without a degree of bravery. It doesn't happen without a very strong sense of self. And I think that as a neuroscientist, as a marketer, and as a mom, it's something I spend a lot of time thinking about is how do we make sure that we are really connecting with the world around us, but we're not using technology as an escape.
We are the goldfish.
We are the goldfish. How perfect.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here. I feel like we could talk about so much, but I will leave it at that because I think it's a pretty poignant part of, again, the connection between technology, which is an inevitable factor in our lives moving forward, but also coming back to the fact that we are humans, we strive for connections, we are social creatures, and really building and bridging and accelerating those connections is really what we all need to be putting at the forefront of our approaches and strategies.
I love it. So fun. Thanks, Brit.
Be a friend, tell a friend, and subscribe. Earned by CreatorIQ. CreatorIQ is your all-in-one solution to grow, manage, scale, and measure your influencer marketing program. Ready to unlock the power of the creator economy? Get started with a demo today at CreatorIQ.com.